I'm very happy to welcome everyone in this event today joining us. This is a virtual event on agroecology and public health as levers to promote sustainable school food systems. And it's a part of the One Health Summit taking place this week in person in Lyon, France, and virtually here with you all today. My name is Fabrício Muriano. I'm from Instituto Regenera here in Brazil, and I will be co-facilitating with Colleen. Colleen, do you want to present yourself?
Thanks, Fabrício. I'm Colleen Anderson of the South African Organic Sector Organization, and we will be part of your co-moderators in today's event, which is being brought to you by the Agroecology Coalition through its market working group, which Fabrício and myself are co-facilitating, and also in collaboration with the Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition, which is an initiative of the School Meals Coalition. The event is structured into 3 fireside chats. Each chat is graced by experts and practitioners in agroecology and school meals. After the 3 blocks of conversation, it'll be followed by a short Q&A with the online audience, and then we'll close with the takeaway messages from the 3 coalitions on healthy diets, on school meals, and on agroecology. Back to you, Fabrício.
Thank you, Colleen. Before that, we would like to call on Samrat Singh of the School of Public Health at the Imperial College in London, and also of the Research Consortium of the School Meals Coalition. Samrat, you have the ground.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fabrício, and hello and welcome again, everyone. My name is Samrat Singh. I'm going to be very brief and just share with you some context about why we are talking about agroecology, public health, and school food systems today. So starting with a few numbers, some of you might be aware of these. Around 466 million children worldwide, according to the most recent figures, receive school meals in almost every country on this planet. And around $84 billion is approximate investment in school meals programs globally. Having mentioned the numbers, I just want to emphasize that this is not only about scale. School feeding programs and school feeding food systems across the world, especially in countries with constrained financial and governance context, have led to positive changes in terms of food security, public health, and production practices. And more importantly, it's not the results, but also the processes. Many of these changes have occurred through community engagement, through participatory processes, and by creating constituencies of action for policies and starting new political conversations around a wide range of issues related to food systems. And in the process, they've also enabled social and gender inclusion. Some of these facets and conceptual frameworks and case studies were described in the Planet-Friendly School Meals White Paper, which was presented at a number of international forums, including at COP28. Subsequently, there was further exploratory work done specifically on regenerative school meals, funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, which was presented, the findings were presented at the Addis Food System Summit last year. And in a sense, building on those conversations, we are now having deliberate engagement between the School Meals Coalition and the Agroecology Coalition, along with other partners, to understand in more depth how the engagement between public health and agroecology can bring in more positive changes and catalyze further action. Finally, I would just like to share with you that school feeding food systems, with regard to the deliberate engagement with agroecology, public health, conservation, etc., they offer viable and effective policy and operational pathways for wider food system transformation. And equally importantly, they help reframe our understanding of what is evidence, what is impact, and what is knowledge as practitioners and researchers. So there's a lot of exciting, interesting work to be done. There's a lot more to be understood of how school meals, food systems, and the leveraging of public health and agroecology can inform policy and practice in different parts of the world. So with that, I look forward to a very exciting set of conversations over the next hour. And thank you very much once again for joining this event.
Thank you very much, Samrat. Thank you for framing that so succinctly. Let's move on to our first segment, which will look into the multiple co-benefits of agroecology on providing nutritious and healthy food for all, while ensuring sustainable food systems. So today our discussants are Rosinah Mbenya and Rachel Bezner Kerr from Cornell University. Rosinah, would you like to respond?
Thank you,
So
Colleen.
the question, sorry, Rosinah, I think I've missed the question that I was supposed to pose to you. So as PELUM Kenya is focusing on promoting agroecology, sustainable land use, and food sovereignty among smallholder farmers to enhance food security, biodiversity, and community resilience against climate change, how does this align with school feeding? Over to you. Rosinah?
Thank you, Colleen. It's a pleasure to be here. Greetings, everyone from Kenya. I'm Rosinah Mbenya, working with the PELUM Kenya as the country coordinator. And yeah, indeed, as you mentioned, the core business of PELUM Kenya is the promotion of agroecology, the principles and the practices, as a network of 68 member organizations in Kenya, reaching over 1 million smallholder farmers. Over the years, we have been engaging in this work of agroecology. And in the recent past, we realized that the school feeding programs, they provide a huge potential for us to be able to integrate agroecology. And we were able to develop or start an initiative of promoting agroecology in school feeding. So basically, what we are doing is that we are seeing these like the school meals being a potential for linking the smallholder farmers that have been producing agroecological products for markets. They have local markets, ready markets within the schools. And at the same time as they offer these ready markets, they are able also to contribute to nutritious and healthy meals, because agroecological foods, the research has shown that they are more healthier. And you find that most of the school feeding, they have limited nutritional foods. For instance, in Kenya, most of them, it has been rice, beans, or most of the time grains and kind of starch, or even a cup of wood. So we are seeing that if we work with all the stakeholders, we can really scale up this model whereby we also link the local producers who are producing agroecological, diverse kind of foods to these school meals. Secondly, through this intervention, we hope that the learners will learn about agroecology. We'll also be able to learn about interventions that they can take home and also practice at the school. In our initiative, we're also setting up school gardens so that the schools can also be able to provide some percentage or some effort towards the school meals that are being provided, not only just relying on the outside supply. Even if it's 1 meal per week, or even if it's 1 meal per term, it is still fine, but it is going to be able to contribute and also provide a learning ground for the teachers, for the students, and even parents or visitors who come to the school. The other aspect is that we are also introducing the comprehensive look into what agroecology is, and this includes also looking at for example, the energy saving GCOS, because agroecology is broader than just the one practice. It's comprehensive, looking at the nature. So we are looking to working in the schools. We started this initiative last year, So it's at very early stages. We are working with 30 schools. So we are setting up, or we have already started setting up the demo gardens in the schools. We are going to be setting up eco-friendly GCOs to the schools. We are going to also set up water harvesting techniques to the schools, and also really liaise with our agroecological farmers to provide the needed guidance to these schools. So this is being piloted in Murang'a. We are also working with 2,700 farmers with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation. Yes, so eventually we have the schools being a learning hub, and also the farmers providing a very strong link, because it would be wrong for a farmer who is doing agroecological, the students at school, they are not participating or getting any agroecological meals. Yeah, so thank you very much. But yeah, there's a big linkage between the school meals and the agroecological regenerative foods. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosinah. And Rachel, together with other colleagues, you conducted a study looking at the link between food security, nutrition, and agroecology in low and middle income countries. What are your major findings? Can agroecology really improve food and nutrition security? Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for the question. And yes, we reviewed thousands of studies looking for studies that specifically measured both agroecological practices and food security and nutrition outcomes. And we found over a 20-year period. So we looked at studies published in peer-reviewed scientific journals between 1998 and 2019. And we found 56 studies that fulfilled both those criteria, that measured both agroecological practices and food security and nutrition outcomes. And 78% of those studies showed evidence of positive outcomes. Some showed sort of neutral or no outcome, but the vast majority showed positive outcomes. And what we also found is that the more complex the intervention, so it wasn't just increasing crop diversity, for example, but maybe farmer-to-farmer training or a combination of practices. So what Rosinah just described, for example, would be a more complex agroecological intervention. The more complex agroecological combination, the more likely it was to lead to positive nutrition outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Very interesting. Of course, we would expect to hear those findings. We all know that. And now a question to both of you. And Rosinah, if you could answer this first. So based on your respective work, is better health and nutrition a real co-benefit that agroecology is bringing? And how can we further promote that?
Thank you once more, Colleen, for that question. Yeah, I think indeed we have a lot of areas to look into, but I want to just focus on a few. One of them, I just want to re-emphasize the importance and the urgency to really integrate agroecology into the school feeding programs. These will enhance also short-term value chains, because we have also a lot of farmers who are looking for markets, who are able to supply locally, so that the shorter the value chain, the better it is for the climate. At the same time, of course, we cannot underestimate the power of having the farmers being really linked to their own schools to provide the nutritious meals to the students. Secondly, I'm looking at the area of increasing financing and investments into regenerative and agroecological foods. There is a lot that needs to be done, a lot of work in terms of even reaching out to more farmers who can be able to practice agroecology. We also, there's a lot of work to be done with other schools. So there's really heightened need to invest more. And I mean, the clip that was introduced is showing the climate crisis is continuing to grow. This year, Kenya, we had very early rains, which also came in a flooding state, or the rains were more than expected, causing a lot of havoc. And of course, we have seen researchers who have also confirmed to us that agroecological and regenerative foods are also part of the solution. So if we can have more investments, basically the research that is shared there shows less than 2% actually goes to the regenerative foods in terms of climate finance. So we really need the agency to increase the investments so that we can scale out and scale deep and scale wide. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosinah. Rachel, would you like to have a go at responding to those questions?
Yes, so I would say that agroecology as an approach goes beyond thinking about the kind of practices happening in farmers' fields, but includes paying attention to supporting a nourishing food system that is healthy and nutritious. And so it's beyond being a co-benefit. It's really at the heart of what an agroecological approach is about. And so, yes, definitely having more improved nutrition, meeting people's nutrition needs, and having a healthy diet is at the core of an agroecological approach.
Thank you both, Rosinah. It is and Professor Rachel. It is amazing to see both examples, either from the ground and considering what has been published so far, and we see very good signs coming from agroecological projects or publishing. And let's go to the second segment of which concerns the different contours of school feeding agroecology interaction. So I'm happy to have here with us Marcia Muchagata, who's an advisor here in Brazil of the Ministry of Social Development, and also Dr. Peiman Milani from the Rockefeller Foundation in the United States. And I will start with a question to Marcia, if she can hear me well. So Brazil School Meals Program is often seen as a benchmark and integrating both nutrition, agroecology, and smallholder agriculture. What are the initial successes, or how are you planning to bring it to the next level or scale, Marcia?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your question, Fabricio. Fabricio, please tell me if my connection is good enough for you to hear me. In the case it's not, I can close my camera. That's fine?
No, I can hear you
Great.
well.
Okay, great. The Brazilian school feeding program is over 70 years old now, which was in 2009, and it began to require a minimum percentage of food purchased from family farming. This change was the result of lessons learned from the earlier public procurement initiative, which is the Food Acquisition Program, the PAA. The PAA was created in 2003 within the scope of the Zero Hunger Plan and provided the purchase of food from family farming for donation to the population in food insecurity, serving daycare centers, social assistance facilities, hospitals, and schools, among others. So the program, the Brazilian School Feeding Program, the PNAE, today serves more than 40 million students throughout Brazil. By law, municipalities that receive part of the school meal resources from the federal government must purchase at least 30% of their food from family farmers. And in 2025, this requirement was raised to 45%. Thus, the PAA and the PNAE, even more so, have demonstrated the power of public food procurement to promote systemic change, increasing producers' income, and ensuring adequate health food for the population. Significant changes over the time include prioritizing poorer farmers, these farmers taking part in the single registry of social programs in Brazil, and prioritizing women and indigenous peoples and communities, as well as simplifying processes, particularly regarding farmers' documentations, that is an important issue in Brazil. Both the Food Acquisition Program and the National School Feeding Program pay 30% more for organic or agroecologically produced products, aiming to stimulate health, sustainable food production. Also, since 2012, Brazil has a national policy on agroecology and organic production with intersectoral policy spheres and civil society participation. I would like to mention some important initiatives in this regard. The EcoFort program, which aims to support organizations in developing agroecological projects. The initiative of Agroecology centers in universities to develop training for students and support for farmers, and the Amazon in School program implemented by NGOs with public funds to offer technical assistance to farmers and support schools with the purchase of equipment, training of cooks, menu development, and so on. These three programs mobilized approximately $90 million in 3 years. Finally, I would like to mention the work of non-governmental organizations, such as Comida da Manhã Instituto Regenera, where Fabrício works, which are working directly with municipalities to promote municipal legal frameworks and encourage city halls to implement the Agroecological National School Feeding Program. That's all. Thank you, Fabrício.
I must say that I work with the subject here in Brazil, but I had never seen such a summarization. So thank you so much, Marcia. And we will follow with Peiman right after. And so I would like to ask you, Peiman, how is the regenerative school meals? I know there is a big effort from the Rockefeller Foundation. So how is the regenerative school meals program showing that school feeding can really shift from a nutrition intervention to a lever for agroecological transition?
Thank you very much, Fabrício. Pleasure to be with you and colleagues and Marcia on this all Brazilian segment of the session. So I speak to you from Nairobi, which is where I'm based. And as Fabrício mentioned, we have a global initiative on regenerative school meals with focus on three main geographies: Brazil and Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And we're starting to see some emerging proof points from these different geographies that school meal programs can, in effect, be that lever that catalyzes, triggers, and accelerates agroecological transitions in different landscapes. So let me start with Brazil, where we are supporting an initiative led by Instituto Comida do Amanhã, which is called PENAI Agroecológico, which is precisely agroecological school meals or school meal programs. And what it's doing is that in 11 municipalities spread across the country, we are working with the municipalities to change their procurement processes to sort of give preferential purchasing to agroecologically sourced foods, while at the same time supporting initial sets of champion local farmers with technical assistance, with technology, with support, and connection to markets to precisely test that. So right now, the team is working across these different municipalities to sort of instrumentalize the program. It should really kick in more strongly towards the end of the year. But the early signs are very encouraging in terms of the engagement across sectors, across stakeholders that this initiative is producing. In Kenya, we are supporting the Murang'a County process, which Rosinah already alluded to, and there too, I mean, we see fantastic mobilization, enthusiasm, and early signs that yes, this can work. There is strong momentum there. And then in Asia, I can mention the pilot we have in the East Lampung in Sumatra Island, in partnership with Olen Food Ingredients and the local district, where actually the policy of the district has shifted to require organically produced foods as a requirement for sourcing into school meals. So that is actually already running. It's engaging, hundreds of farmers and a number of cooperatives, the centralized school kitchens that produce the school meals, and the schools themselves, where these foods are already being served with very positive results in the sense that you can see the whole machinery, the whole chain flowing and working and delivering safe, nutritious foods. The farmers are very happy because that's a region of high cocoa production. So there is intercropping of food crops with the cocoa production, and those foods intercropped with the cocoa are primarily the ones being supplied to the school meals program. So I would just summarize that the pattern we are seeing across geographies is really of two key entry points. One from the school meals angle, where there is a deliberate decision to use the school meals program as this catalytic lever. But there's also another interesting entry point in landscapes that have embarked on an agroecological transition process And they see that that initial offtake and market demand is very important to set things in motion. And then school meal programs can provide that structured, predictable, and profitable demand to the smallholder farmers to supply the foods agroecologically produced. Thanks.
Thank you, Peiman. So now we've traveled all around the world and coming back to here, I wanted to ask a final question for you both, and trying to bring the examples on what are the political and financial barriers that you both see in terms of having and for sure scaling an agroecological and truly regenerative school meals program.
Do I start?
Yes, please, Marcia. Thank you.
Yes. Wow. I think one of the most significant problems in Brazil is that our agri-food system is primarily geared towards the production of commodities, such as soybean and cattle, which channel all incentives such as infrastructure, credit, and services. So unfortunately, most of the program's credit for strengthening family farmers is allocated to soy, corn, and cattle ranching, while agroecological producers face many difficulties, receiving much less support and bearing the environmental impacts of conventional production. It's frequently we see agroecological farmers that receive some agrochemicals from planes. Another important point is that the lack of legal definition of what constitutes an agroecological product, which make it difficult to map and measure the agroecological systems and production. Ongoing climate change also poses a major threat, even though you know that agroecological systems are much more resilient. Finally, a bottleneck that has been difficult to address concerns technical assistance. We have a few trained professionals, not many people working in the field, and great difficulty in providing services that truly address farmers' needs. All of this means that supply of agroecological food products are still small, or at least not so big as we like them to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Again, a shift of subsidies, technical assistance, very local, but at the same generalizable realities that we find here. And I would like only to remember everyone that we have a Q&A for everyone that wants to ask directly to the speakers. And Peiman, would you like to answer that too?
Thanks, Fabrizio. So Marcia's answers are great. I'll try to be non-repetitive. But the first thing I would point out is that we are talking about a food systems transformation type of initiative. So as always, there is a challenge of cross-ministerial, cross-agency coordination. You have health, you have agriculture, you have education, you have so social protection. So you have different agencies, ministries, departments, etc. And ensuring fluid and effective coordination between those has proven to be a challenge, not just with, let's say, regenerative school meals, but food systems initiatives in general. I think we also need to close some evidence gaps. There are still some gaps that we need to close. So in terms of the effectiveness of school meals on enrollment, attendance, equity, that's well established. But on the cost efficiency of sourcing foods regeneratively, we have a more mixed evidence. And then, when you talk about, let's say, how much you gain in nutrition for the students at a more, let's say, biological or molecular level, that too is an area that still we have evidence gaps to plug. We are, by the way, investing in our periodic table of foods initiative in a collaboration with the Micronutrient Forum, precisely to close that gap. I mean, there is good evidence that agroecologically sourced food is safer, right, from a pesticide perspective, heavy metals, etc. But if you let's say stick just to the traditional nutrients without factoring in all the bioactive compounds and phytochemicals, I think there's still homework to be done there. We also need to finance these farmer transitions. I mean, there is investment and risk required. Brazil has a very unique position because of its PRONAF program, which is really fantastic in terms of making low-cost credit available to farmers, to smallholder farmers, including for agroecological transitions. But that's not, let's say, the rule globally speaking. There's also some challenges in terms of procurement regulation, right? I mean, how to get that right. Because, as Marcia said, Brazil is a good example where just allowing for a premium to be paid for agroecological foods doesn't guarantee that municipalities will necessarily do that, because there will always be budget constraints anyway. So I think we need to aim more from the, let's say, preferential procurement lever than just premium pricing. But overall, I mean, these challenges are part of the journey. I think there's good progress being made on all these fronts. So I remain optimistic that, in a few years, we'll have overcome these, we'll have learned globally, landscape by landscape, country by country, sharing and advancing globally towards regenerative school meals. Back to you.
Many thanks, Marcia and Peiman. It's really, really interesting to hear what's been happening around the world. And I must say, in South Africa here, we're very, very envious of Kenya and Brazil. We're so far behind in South Africa. But Marcia, you asked a question about what constitutes and what constitutes an agroecology produce. And I think here, what we do in South Africa, which has been very successful, is using participatory guarantee systems to bring farmers together so that they're following the same farming protocol, which is generally based on organic standards. PGS allows farmers to access organic seals or be able to claim organic produce because they do follow a standard. Working with PGS in smaller groups of farmers has really proved a very, very viable way, not only in having farmers exchange knowledge, but also in aggregating their produce together and marketing it as a group. So thank you very much. And so now we're going to be moving on to the third segment of the chat. And we would like to talk about fostering closer connection between school feeding networks and agroecology. So joining us in this segment are Ms. Irish Baguilat from the Asian Farmers Association and Mr. Gopinath from the Swaminathan Research Foundation. Thank you very much for being here. I would like to ask Irish, in terms of, the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development focuses on strengthening the link between local smallholder farmers and school feeding programs, advocating for homegrown school feeding models. How are you connecting farmer organizations to the school's procurement system? Thanks, Irish.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Colleen, and thank you to the organizers for having me join in this webinar. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that AFA does not focus only on linking smallholder farmers to the school feeding as a stable and local market, but we are actually approaching this as more wider market, and I can discuss more about why we think that diversifying market in a changing climate is very important, and not just focusing on one market. But AFA, as a regional network of national farmers organization and agricultural cooperatives across the region, Asia, we have been advocating for direct procurement from farmers organization and cooperatives. And in fact, in 2016, we have published an issue paper entitled Making Public procurement work for Asian family farmers. And this issue paper examined key opportunities and challenges in linking smallholders to institutional markets. And building on this work, still for awareness and advocacy, in April 2023, we have co-organized with Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, or CIRCA, a regional policy forum entitled From Farm to Schools for Sustainable and Inclusive School-Based Nutrition Program, where we actually brought together education ministries in Southeast Asia alongside farmers' organization and civil society actors to have an exchange, share lessons, and explore the different pathways for scaling up already existing models of inclusive and sustainable school feeding program in Southeast Asia. And this year, still for policy advocacy and awareness raising, being a regional network engage at international and regional policy processes in collaboration with GIZ and BMZ, we are developing an evidence-based policy position and knowledge product that show the existing capacities of agricultural cooperatives and farmers organizations, as well as the needed investment to address the gaps and the prevailing challenges of creating that link. And more importantly, in AFA, we have been implementing specific programs or regional projects and initiatives that actually supports enterprises of farmers organizations and cooperative, which prepares them to engage in institutional procurement. And as I have mentioned, one of the work that we're doing is strengthening access to diverse market, including school meals, because at the moment the price of food items being procured is still, I mean, as mentioned already, not a premium price. And so we are also working to strengthen the capacity of agricultural cooperatives to link with private sector procuring entities such as hotels that gives a more premium price, and even supporting farmers organization to create farmers markets so they also have access directly to consumers. And we are also at the moment trying to unlock available resources and even climate finance, because this is part of building the capacity of farmers organization and agricultural cooperative to consolidate products and be able to go into contract and have partnerships with procuring entities. And lastly, I wanted to mention that we are building capacities in 10 domains, but I just mentioned some domains. So we are basically building capacities of farmers organization, which is linked to the procurement capacity. So this includes governance, legal and regulatory compliance, procurement readiness, particularly knowledge of systems. In the Philippines, we have the PhilJEPS, which is the procurement system. We're also building capacities in terms of production and aggregation, logistics, and delivery system. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Irish. It's very interesting. And Mr. Gopinath, from your side, I mean, the Swaminathan Research Foundation also integrates agroecology and school feeding schools initiatives to enhance nutrition security, particularly for children in rural communities. So how does your approach of combining agricultural education with the establishment of nutrition gardens in schools and villages work? Can you talk a little bit more about that to us, please?
Certainly. Thank you very much. And we, MSSRF, we see the educational institution, particularly school in a village, is a venue where you bring some convergence of scientists, like nutritionists, agriculture department people, community, to act together in a way to understand nutritional deficiency of that particular area, say district in India, and then design a nutrition garden at the school premises, having traditional crops and climate resilient practices that is available, very much closely associated with their own culture, in a way to address nutritional deficiency of the particular area. So what we design at school for each school is something like very much associated with the nutritional deficiency of the particular area, but species are locally grown species. So the community members or farmers used to help these children on how to grow this one. Meantime, the agriculture department, particularly horticulture department, also support creating materials which will teach children about growing this one in a more climate resilient way, organic and other climate resilient ways, and that will transfer into that food plate. So the nutrition garden, school nutrition garden in our own areas, so both the hilly area in one eastern part of India and also this rainfed area in western part of India, is something like the area where children can get education about the importance of the traditional crops, which are nutri-rich, in a way to reduce nutritional deficiencies of that particular groups. And we also studied, and it is proved that the knowledge that gained at schools transferred into their household level, where in Eastern India that knowledge transferred into their parents also, and we got those kind of nutri-rich crops replicated in the mainland as a mixed crop, whereas in western part of India, where this is got replicated in their household nutrition garden, where this the regular kitchen garden transferred into nutrition garden kind of things. It is also important to mention that the local community, as a part of this parent teachers association or whatever it is, they used to come forward and contribute in a way to educate these children locally. And the horticulture department, mainly confined to giving training to farmers who are interested in other things, they also extend their support to educate these children by sharing the materials. So teachers are playing a major role to bring all these groups. So it is something like a convergence model. That's why the government of India has replicated this one with whatever programs available. Particularly, they are targeting women. But one thing which is a threat of this this one nutrition garden is each nutrition garden should be according to the nutritional deficiency of that particular area. The second part is the nutrition garden should have traditional crops or climate resilient crops that have potential to address nutritional deficiencies of this particular area. This is how we are working. This is how we are replicating in other areas. And the second segment is rolling out this one into a large scale or incorporating into policy one. For India kind of countries, it requires a farmers association supplying to a cluster of villages where you have a potential of supplying to 10,000 plus students rather supplying to each individual schools. This is also, we are experimenting it now. We are trying to connect farmer producer organizations with the local government system to supply key traditional crops which are nutri-rich that can be supplied through school feeding program. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot of progress being made. Okay, so we've got a question now for both of you. How can your respective initiatives be scaled up? So what do you think is needed to foster and sustain the important linkage between smallholder farmers and school feeding programs? Irish, would you like to respond first?
Yes. The good news is that we are not starting from zero, and I already mentioned that there are existing initiatives and actually existing linkages between agricultural cooperatives and procurement, institutional procurement, and food public food programs in Asia, and also in particular here in Southeast Asia. There are existing models and lessons that we can build on to actually scale this up. For example, here in the Philippines, as a member, AgriCoop PH, and several of its primary cooperative members are already supplying schools and districts, even local government units using both competitive bidding and negotiated procurement modalities. And these are not just pilot efforts. They clearly demonstrate that engagement with public procurement system is already happening and can be expanded with the right support and capacity building program. And I was in another session previously where they actually talk about enabling environment, and somehow here in Southeast Asia there are already the enabling environment, and the gaps are actually in the implementation of the existing model. So when we say scaling up using policy instruments, it's already there. So the focus really is strengthening the implementation. So I have mentioned that there are already models existing. Some agri-cooperatives are actually adopting clustering approaches, enabling them to consolidate supply and engage with larger markets, including private sector buyers, in addition to schools. And other cooperatives are going further by supporting their members through agroecological practices. And even cooperatives are now producing bio inputs, for example, for distribution and for provision to their members. They are even providing financing, which is very important in the transition process. And also, financing is very important when farmer groups and cooperatives are engaging in public food procurement, because they have to consolidate and really have enough capital. And also these efforts are not limited in the Philippines. We see comparable initiatives emerging in Cambodia. There are 7 cooperatives, for example, who are women-led, who are engaging with the WFP school feeding program, and also in Indonesia, where we supported some enterprises and diversification, and this enabled them to supply, for example, the ingredients or the requirements of the school feeding, and this actually suggests the strong potential for regional learning in Asia, and also scaling. And in short, for us, scaling up means we need to support as many agri-cooperatives as we can using existing models and also lessons learned, especially the smaller cooperatives, so they can become suppliers to institutional markets and public food programs. And at the same time, scaling up cannot focus only on the supply side alone. There are significant implementation gaps on the demand side, and these include the procurement practices and behaviors at the local level, risk aversion, and limited awareness of the procuring entities of the law that actually allows community participation, and or what we call negotiated procurement in the Philippines, and swakelola in Indonesia. So this is, I think, where also, of course, policy remains relevant, and continuous advocacy from the diverse civil society sector. And yeah, of course, ultimately, if we want school meal program to contribute to agroecological transition and economic empowerment of farmers, including improved nutrition, we need to invest across the entire system, which Peiman mentioned, not just on the supply side, but also more importantly on the demand side, in really strengthening as many cooperatives, so we can really reach millions of small-scale farmers in the region. Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing the discussion.
Thank you, Irish. And Gopinath, please, if you could respond.
Yes, here I would like to share some points from Indian context. So there are greater scope in school meal program policies, but when these policies are transferred into programs to have action on the field, a country like India, where you have states, the provinces in other areas, having greater role on this implementation, they have a control on designing your menu. Okay, so there we have a greater scope to link farmer producer organizations like Irish mentioned, it's a cooperatives. And now here it's a farmer producer organizations where you have 1,000 farmers coming together and having producer organizations and enjoying this financial support to specialized production of a particular product or particular produce. That farmer producer organizations can be tied up with this school meal program at a cluster level, supplying different food items. Here, when we talk about linking these farmers with the school meal program, we just see it together. The important thing is we have to see different segments as different ingredients. If you take Indian food system in the school meal, what they are giving, that is grains is one part, pulses is the other part, oil is third part, and vegetables as fourth part. The vegetables are having greater scope for integrating with the farmers at the cluster level. But pulses can be possible at somewhat higher than the clusters. So farmer producer, 2-3 farmer producer organizations can come together. Government can facilitate that one to supply these pulses. Grains is the area where you have greater financial support is required. However, the climate resilient crops like core cereals can be incorporated in this school meal program through this local production. Okay, we have to design in a way by the ingredients to ingredients in a particular menu rather going it together. The challenging one when we discuss with these government officials, the thing that they are saying that a major challenge to have this one, collaboration with the local farmers is a regular supply. So we need to create a strong supply chain to ensure regular supply from these farmers who are predominantly small and marginal. In Indian case, their average landholding size is 1 or 2 acres, not even 1 hectare. Okay, so we need to create a strong supply chain and quality control. So the real quality control is very much required as it goes to schools. So some detailed plan is required, and some states are proactive in linking farmers with the school meal program, but that is happening at vegetables level. But cereals, pulses, oil items. So those are the other 3 major areas where we can design a good link with the farmers in a way to bring more local producers into the government food system. That is having greater scope. Discussions is going on. We feel it will happen in future at local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopinath, and thank you, Irish. We have now reached that point in which we can have a little bit of the conversation on the questions and answers. So I see a question from the very beginning, and please, all of the speakers, be prepared for this fireside chat now. So Samson Lija from Malawi has asked a question to Rosinah on what models or approaches have you been or you are using, and from those models, what models have proven most effective in balancing the costs of agroecology-based school feeding with government budget in low resource settings? Rosinah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Fabricio, and yeah, that's a very good question. And something I just want to mention or clarify also is that in our initiative, we are also liaising or linking up with the county, and this because in Kenya, agriculture is devolved, and also there are some elements of education, particularly the ECD, that is also very much devolved. So what we have also come up with is a county development strategic plan. Of course, Murang'a County has already the agroecology policy and act, and these documents are going to ensure that eventually we have we are also anchoring the agroecology into mainstream support of the government. Further, we have actually already developed a training manual that is not only for our project, but can also be used by other government officials and other stakeholders who want to really to engage schools in setting up of kitchen gardens or training the farmers on agroecology. So this way we find there are sustainable models which can go beyond the project scope and also scale up the impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosinah. Very material example. Again, I would like to follow with a more broader question, and I thank so much for Rachel, specifically for answering a part of them, and I will certainly follow with you after Rachel. But one of the questions you answered is a broader question to the other participants too on the. So Navneet is a student of agricultural extension, and he would like to ask how an extension professional can effectively contribute to promotion of agroecology. Additionally, he's interested in understanding how one can build a successful professional career in this field, and he would like guidance and insight on this matter. Anyone who wants to open the mic from the speakers, please do, and to answer Navneet. Professor Rachel, do you want to start and comment
Sure.
on what you?
Yeah, I had responded already in the chat that I think definitely being an agricultural extension worker is a core part of supporting agroecological transition. So it's not my area. I don't do training of extension workers, but I know that there is training provided in a number of contexts. So I pointed to the Agroecology Coalition's website as maybe a starting point for looking for training opportunities. I also know that the Institute for Agroecology out of the University of Vermont has online training opportunities. So those were some starting points, and I just really wanted to encourage them to pursue this, because I think there is a potential for a flourishing career in this area, and I think there's growing interest in a number of countries, as you've seen from the presentations today.
And I don't want to put you in the fire, Marcia, but you mentioned technical assistance as one of the barriers in here. So if you would like to comment on that.
Yeah. Well, I think someone who wants really to go into the agroecological extension work should start being with the farmers and learn from them. And I say that in Brazil we have a good experience that we are supporting university centers with for them to carry on agroecological projects. And this is something that is really a very good policy, although we don't have much money on this, because we have the universities, they have to work with farmer organizations, and they are learning from the farmers, learning from the university, and the students are getting trained. So it's the way we are using to expand the number of professionals working. But for someone who wants to go into the field of agroecology, it has to look at the nature, it has to look at the farmers. So just go on. I'm sure you find lots of opportunities. Not a good salary, very high salary, but many opportunities. And this is very important, because now we have this petrol crisis now, and agroecology is the solution for our farming systems.
I can assure in a couple of years this salary is going to be much higher by the needs we have on technical assistance. So thank you so much, Marcia. And with that, I would like, if I can, Professor Rachel, that you could comment on the answer that you made for explaining complex agroecology intervention with examples. A question from Catherine Reed, because that was very enlightening.
Thank you. Yes, the word complex maybe is a scary word for people think, oh, this doesn't sound good. But essentially what we were discerning was if a study was looking at, one of the most common studies was, does crop diversification improve nutrition? So just increasing the number of crops in a farm, does that mean you have improved nutrition? And that was the most common, but the type of study where you were less likely to see direct impacts on nutrition, because there's a long way from the farmer's field to people's mouths, what they're consuming, right? So what we found was if you have more than one practice, so maybe you're doing some composting, maybe you've incorporated animals into your system, maybe you have agroforestry and crop diversification, so multiple practices, and some of the social dimensions of agroecology. So maybe there's farmer to farmer teaching, maybe there's attention to gender dimensions and addressing gender inequalities within households and communities. So when there's more than one type of agroecological practice going on, you're more likely to see positive impacts on food security and nutrition.
Thank you again, Professor Rachel. I would like to question Peiman, specifically, if you can elaborate or describe a little bit on the initiative you mentioned about addressing the evidence gap about nutrition and agroecology in a more molecular level.
Sure. So I think this is one of those areas where we have sort of almost like different fields, paradigms, right? I mean, we have the challenge of cross-disciplinarity here. But traditional nutrition science has really been very focused on a few dozen molecules, right? Or nutrients, the macronutrients, the micronutrients. And often there's very deep discussions on one single micronutrient, right? So it's very easy to sort of get zoomed in and lost in the weeds of micronutrient by micronutrient. I think when you adopt a food systems approach, you really have to look more broadly at improving diets, at improving the diversity of foods and food groups consumed, etc. That said, we think eventually science will bear out that agroecologically produced food is not only safer, but also more nutritious, right? And when you think about healthy foods, to simplify it, it means safe and nutritious. I think the safety side is less debated, but on the nutrition side, there is really a bit of a split. There are split views, right? Oh no, there's no real evidence that growing things organically or agroecologically makes the food more nutritious. So we think that there's, first of all, we need to increase the evidence base overall, including in terms of the nutrients, be them macro or micro. But then there is this whole new dimension of the so-called dark matter of food, right? I mean, the thousands and thousands of molecules that actually make up our food, of which we know very little about, right? I mean, even the best food composition tables and systems will have a couple hundred things cataloged there. What do we make of all the other thousands of things that are there, of which we have very little clarity in terms of their functional role, their, how they are metabolized, their health effects. So there's a whole body of work on that under the umbrella of what we call the Periodic Table of Foods Initiative, right? And the idea of building the equivalent of a periodic table of foods, only of course much more granular, by using the latest omics technologies, right? I mean, proteomics, lipidomics, etc., to analyze these foods through, spectrometry and so forth, and the common methodology. So it's a really cool project. I don't want to, let's say, divert too much into that. But essentially what it will give us is an increasing body of knowledge of the molecular composition of all foods that we consume. And the work is massive, as you can imagine. It's a multi-year endeavor, but it has started with the most commonly consumed foods. And we are already getting some very interesting facts in terms of, things grown in different places may actually have significantly different molecular composition. Mm-hmm. Vegetables that we consider, these two are very similar, but actually they only intersect, the intersection of biomolecules that they have is much smaller than the molecules that they have distinctly, disjointedly. So I was making reference to a particular project within this Periodic Table of Foods initiative, which is in collaboration with the Micronutrient Forum one of, let's say, the leading institutions in the world of nutrition and micronutrition and that, to work together and say, hey, are things grown this way? What is the difference? Not just in terms of micronutrient composition, but at least, let's say, the broader set of the so-called phytochemicals or bioactive compounds, the anthocyanins, the catechins, and all these other ones that we know are beneficial to human health, but have just not received the depth of investigation and attention, scientific attention, that the traditional nutrients have. Sorry if I went a bit too far, but it's a very fascinating topic.
It's definitely very fascinating, and I cannot leave it, like the idea that you also have to remember that we normally say in the agroecological movement in here that our revolution is going to be delicious, because when you reach the people who are your public, for instance, in school meals, the school community is a very important veto actor. So you have to design delicious dishes too, with all of that comes from agroecology. With that, Gopinath, I would like to ask you one question from Oliver Chilenga from Malawi, and her question is on would you be on financing, how are fundraising and building financial partnerships within your model?
Yeah, this model doesn't require much finance because the design is happening for the school nutrition garden. Design is happening at schools where horticulture department, government departments, they have their own funding, whereas the school education, they have funding for designing their school nutrition garden. They tap these local members to help them. So it never requires funding, huge funding for this model, as the school education department is having minimum amount to design their own premises. Here in India, you have premises next to your schools. The next part is, of course, your school meal program has funding from the government. That fund can be tapped to these farmer groups to procure products from their own production. So it never requires any funding to roll out these models.
Thank you, Gopinath. It's amazing to see how you're finding a way to do it with not necessarily big budgets, and that's a possibility that entails more countries worldwide. And I have a broader question, which I believe can be the last. We will decide during the answering, because it's going to be open to all the speakers again, from Hajara Kamoga. She says, from the presentations, I get the impression that in many countries represented here, governments provide direct budgetary support for school feeding programs. In Uganda, however, there is a limited public funding allocated to school feeding, which makes implementation, especially in public schools, quite challenging. This also affects efforts to create structured markets for agroecological farmers, as our engagement is often limited to initiatives like school and vegetable gardens. So, in contexts like ours, her context, what practical strategies or models have been effective in expanding and strengthening school feeding programs, particularly where government funding is minimal? I know it's a hard one. Please do take the chance. Go on, Peiman.
Thanks. I'll just get us started. I mean, I think there's really two models. I mean, so let me start by just, let's say, appreciating and empathizing the challenge, because when government funding is not available in public schools, it is really very, very challenging. What we've seen work in some contexts is, I'll just mention two models. One is really, let's say, community-based feeding, which involves an element of parental contribution. Even in some contexts where the government does provide school feeding, parental contribution is expected. But in this case, you'd really have to work with the parents to support it. We have an entity in Kenya called Malaika Kitchens. It's operating at a small scale, but has had some success in terms of building that awareness of all the societal benefits of school meals with parents. And then most of the feeding comes from the parents, either financially or in kind. The other one is the idea of school farms. We know that in our continent here in Africa, many rural and peri-urban schools have vast tracts of land, like often multiple hectares, that are completely unused. So if that's something that we've been exploring ourselves. I mean, what kinds of governance and business models could enable those unused hectares to be productively farmed to then provide a substantial portion of the school meals and perhaps generate income for the school itself. There are a few successful examples of this in countries like Ghana, Liberia. So there are a few, let's say, spotlights here or there. A lot of boarding schools, secondary schools also do that successfully. It's not trivial, but it can be done. So that could be another route to explore. You're muted, Fabrizio.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the examples you've shared. And I would like to open again if anyone else wants to comment on how to broaden or widen the support from government, specifically when you don't have for the school feeding programs. Okay, anyone willing to do so, just raise your hand after. And did you open the mic, Peiman? Do you want to follow?
I was just going to say, sounds like the answer is don't give up on advocacy.
Please.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, I think you see successful examples of governments supporting school meals and linking to agroecological production, often after social movements and civil society puts pressure on their governments to do those kinds of programs. And so I know that Uganda has an active civil society groups advocating for agroecology, and so I wouldn't give up on this means. I think governments are very interested in improved school outcomes and in productivity, and I think that may be a lever to connect agroecological production with school meals. You get many bangs for your buck with that kind of program from a public funds perspective.
Thank you, Rachel. And again, I think I would only add to what Rachel just mentioned, that if you go to the lower level, to the city level, or even between the farmers, like showing the best greener garden right close by always helps. So anytime you see someone doing such efforts, tends to be very helpful. And I see it with the cities in here. Cities normally also take longer to make the decisions, and as soon as their neighbors are doing, it suddenly becomes faster. And one last open question, because we do have this last 4 minutes, to all of the speakers, from Alejandro Nino. What do you think it's an unexplored topic related to agroecology and nutrition, or need to be more investigated? I like this kind of question because it relates to anyone in the ground and in the end of the process of research, because we know in the ground that there are several things we still want to know, and we know in the research there are several questions that couldn't be answered. So anyone willing to answer that?
I already put in one example, looking at the impacts, not specifically around nutrition, but really the agroecology and health impacts. I think that the exposure to pesticides dimension is underexplored, and there is some growing research showing the connection between pesticide exposure and chronic diseases. And so it's not just in terms of toxic exposure, but the kind of long-term impacts of ongoing exposure to pesticides that have health implications. So I think that's underexplored. I have many. I'm a researcher, so I could come up with a list of 20 things, but maybe some of my colleagues have some other suggestions.
Maybe just to add to the pot, I think the issue of, let's say, the correlation between agroecology and antimicrobial resistance, right? Especially when you think in a One Health context, that's also very interesting. I mean, there is some evidence, but I think it's a great avenue to explore as well.
Thank you again to both answers, specifically with what Rachel mentioned. It's such a topic in here that is truly directly connected to the farmers, and the way we have to address it as a cost of life that these farmers are not going to take, especially having to deal with such chemicals or instruments who will not benefit them, their family, and so on. And with that, I will close 1 minute before scheduled, but give it to Colleen in a way that we can finish this conversation in a very beautiful style. Please, Colleen, go.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. So yeah, thanks so much to our incredible panelists. It's been a very, very interesting discussion. And thanks to all of the people who have put questions to the panelists. So as we go through the conversations today, representatives from the 3 coalitions have been actively listening. And at this point, we'd like to invite them to share their key takeaways. So starting with you, Anna, would you like to share? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to the organizers for inviting us to be part of this. And a huge thank you to all of you who have participated and shared so much interesting pieces to the rich discussion today. As mentioned, so I'm representing UN Nutrition, which is a coordination body that comprises 15 UN entities and agencies whose work all contributes to nutrition in some way. And we've also been co-leading the Secretariat of the Healthy Diets Coalition. So it's a pleasure to bring that perspective today. So I also had the pleasure of participating in the summit this week in Lyon, and I followed a number of sessions and events, and it's wonderful for us to see the level of energy and momentum which is currently converging around the concept of One Health and around taking just more generally a more holistic approach to truly aligning across the different areas of work and the different sectors and ministries. We, as you probably know, in the nutrition sector have long known the level of interconnectedness across our work, and thus the importance of joining forces across sectors. As you all know, nutrition is multifactorial, and thus sustainable progress fully depends on actions across a wide range of sectors to be able to really address the underlying causes of good nutrition. And therefore, for us, it's really a pleasure to see this kind of broader uptake of this notion that our successes are closely linked, and that in order to get the co-benefits that we're all seeking, we need to align our agendas and to break the silos between the sectors of education, nutrition, healthy diets, agroecology, among others. And I actually really appreciated Rachel saying earlier that indeed nutrition goes beyond a co-benefit and is actually at the core of the agroecology approach. So it's a pleasure to hear that. I think for me, one of the messages that's come through clearly today is that school meals really are a lever to be able to achieve impacts that extend far beyond the educational sector. They're a powerful opportunity for us to connect how food is produced, what people eat, what types of food they eat, the health and nutrition of future generations, and beyond. I think school meals are thus really a critical pathway for us to ensure access to healthy diets for the most vulnerable populations, extending even beyond schools. So many of today's speakers have echoed these experiences from across the different contexts. I think it was particularly striking in today's discussion how these school meal programs are embedded into a broader intersectoral system at national level. So I think we heard linkages with agriculture, education, health, social protection, and the environment. And in these examples, school meals are treated not just as an isolated program, but as a strategic investment in human development and sustainable food systems at national level. So these experiences really showed, in my perspective, when policy and financing and implementation are all aligned, that school meals can really become a driver of food systems transformation and of improved nutrition. But I think we also saw that significant work does lie ahead, and we need to be more systematically operate in our operationalization of this approach. I think we've heard clearly that scaling up this approach requires not just policy coherence, which is an obvious starting point, but also long-term political commitment and public financing that values quality and sustainability above just looking at cost. It also requires procurement systems that work for smallholders and a genuine engagement with the communities and the local institutions. So in closing, I think we take away one key takeaway message today around aligning how food is produced with how health and nutrition is promoted, and that school meals programs can become a powerful driver of not just better health and nutrition, but also more sustainable food systems. And the experiences we've heard today are really invaluable lessons for scaling up this approach. So I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity, and we really look forward to continuing this discussion and hopefully working jointly together with you towards this collective objective that we all have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Sylvie, would you like to share your takeaway?
Yes, thank you so much for your invitation. I'm very happy to represent the research consortium of the School Meal Coalition, and particularly Donald Bundy, our director. So at the level of the consortium, we are really considering that working with a free coalition is really a win-win opportunity. We really think that leveraging school meal program and the menu scheduling at national level is a powerful tool to promote regenerative agriculture, agroecology, but also sustainable diet. So we really know with all the research we are gathering worldwide that school meals are really a unique window of opportunity to increase children awareness about food literacy, health, hygiene, sustainable diet, and healthy behavior. Really, at primary school, we know that the children are still open to adopt positive changing and preferences for a healthy diet. So it's really important to invest at this level, and particularly at the school age period. And so if we promote high quality school meals sourced locally with regenerative agriculture, it will have really a social long-term impact. So I don't know if you are well aware about our structure, but the consortium is working worldwide with a global academia of 1,400 people and experts. So we are present in 110 countries with people from the academy, but also implementers of school meal program, people from the ministries, and also civil society. So all this global network is working in different communities of practices with different tools, different approach, and we are working on good practices in implementation and also return on investment in all the sector concerned by school meal, in education, health, but also for local agriculture and also for social safety net. And so these experts, they are connected with all these academic, with national government. And so we really consider that working with a free coalition will bring new insight, new knowledge, and these stakeholders, the 100 and 400 experts, can contribute to connect with the local government. And so I think it will be a powerful lever for all, for the free coalition. So we consider really collaboration between us will improve the sustainable agriculture and long-term well-being of children. And so we are very happy to connect with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvie. And Oliver, What are your takeaways?
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, to the panelists and to participants for generously sharing your ideas, your perspectives, and your experience. What I'm taking away are this. One, agroecology brings multiple co-benefits. It cares for the land, for animals, for peoples, all at once. It is farming with nature, not against it. It produces healthy food while protecting the land, supporting farmers, and connecting producers and consumers. So we have heard the study and cases in Malawi, in Kenya, and other parts of the world. It is about growing and providing nutritious, diverse, and culturally relevant foods and feeding communities in a way that ensures, well, we heard it about it as well, fairness, strengthening resilience, and sustains the planet. Here, women play important roles as custodians of biodiversity, particularly through local seeds, for example, as knowledge holders who pass down deep generational knowledge of sustainable farming, often through informal networks of communities and women associations, and as drivers of household nutrition. I'm just remembering my mom and my wife would think about nutrition and diets all at the same time. So it also does fitting that this year we're celebrating the International Year of Women Farmer. Second takeaway, we can leverage public policies and existing mechanisms to promote the production of food that is good for people, fair to farmers, and kind to the planet. So from what we heard today from Brazil to India to the Philippines, the connection between school feeding and agroecology is closer than we can think. There are already linkages, initiatives, and models to harness and to scale up using the power of public procurement, also competitive bidding and preferential approaches, and a good dose of political will. It is possible to connect school meals and agroecology and come up with programs that nourishes cities, communities while restoring nature, helping tackle climate crisis, optimizing if not reducing costs, which can potentially create decent jobs in food and farming and attracting young people to take agriculture as a career option into the future. So like what we've heard also in Brazil, there's a policy to even purchase up to 40% from family farmers. So we can imagine how this can contribute to some sort of economic stability for farmers. And canteens can become pedagogical tools where students learn about interconnectedness of food systems and planetary health through school gardens, also engaging with parents. And this can be, shaping lifelong sustainable habits. The third thing that I'm taking away is we need to go beyond the lighthouse and pilot syndrome. While the examples we've heard here are all commendable, we need to have more of these until such examples become the norm. So enhancing capacity in terms of organizational and procurement of stakeholders and institutions in the whole chain. We've heard it from the farmers' organizations, from those working in the demand side to those in the supply side and vice versa. So agroecological or truly regenerative school meals program can help local communities to flourish and ensure everyone can eat well. It's about enterprises also, about consumers and communities working together with farmers and producers and their organizations and their local governments to grow and access diverse and healthy food. And this is particularly true in the current context crisis that we're living in, both natural and I dare say man-induced, right? In the face of all these challenges, rising hunger, destruction of biodiversity, agroecology, and school meals can really offer a real path forward, tackling these challenges together by working with nature, building resilience, and supporting communities. So I think our response to a growing polycrisis can indeed be a revolution that is also delicious. So thank you for joining us today. Over to you, Colin and Fabrizio.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Anna, Sylvie, for those takeaways that bring us imagination again and thinking of what is possible right now. And thank again to all of the panelists and everyone that entered. I would like to especially thank the Secretariat for organizing everything here in the back. We will be following up with the recording as well as some additional resources. And for more information on the 3 coalitions, you can check this QR code that is on your screen. And with this, I say goodbye to those. And Colleen, do you want to finish?
I'm just going to say thank you all very much again for participating in this very, very interesting webinar. And have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are. Thank you.